We have to always understand that the human body, for both men and women, has one major priority.
Dr. Mindy Pelz, best-selling author, fasting expert, and women's health advocate, empowering millions to take control of their hormones, health, and healing. How does fasting play into all of this?
The longer you fast, more healing mechanisms turn on. I used to do all these supplement detoxes with my patients. We would give them long lists of like, go look at your bathroom, go look at this. And then I found fasting.
Talk to me about Ozempic.
To me, what I see.
Mindy, so nice to have you here.
Thank you.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time. There's so many interesting areas to go into, a lot of terrain to cover. But just to start out, I want to allow you the opportunity to just articulate this mission that you're on.
I am very clear that I want women specifically to understand how powerful their body was built to be. And because we live in this world where women are completely pulled away from their own intelligence. So fasting was my first tool was to show my patients that you could heal yourself if you just took food out of the equation. And when they got a result, they dropped weight, they got better mental clarity, their hormones balanced. What was so beautiful is when they came back, they couldn't give anybody the credit. They couldn't get the supplement, the credit, the medication, the doctor, they couldn't give it to me. They had to do it themselves. They had to step into their own intelligence. And when I saw women that were so frustrated with their health be able to use something like fasting to heal themselves, and then I just got to sit back and cheer them on, my mission became, we've got to do that in every single aspect of women's health. Women have to start to understand that this incredible body that we are blessed to live in works so perfectly. You just got to line your lifestyle up with it. And then you start to see that intelligence come through, which is not what women are getting right now.
Mm-hmm. You have said that the root cause of poor health are the indulgences of modern living. Now, this is no surprise to anybody, right, obviously. But on the heels of that, you also said that modern life creates an evolutionary mismatch for women. So what does that mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the best way we can understand the human body is to really go back to the hunter-gatherer days. Yet we also don't live in hunter-gatherer days, right? We're in this moment of a modern life. So one of the things we're seeing with women right now is that, let's just take our nervous system alone. So much physical, emotional, chemical stress coming in, so many ways that women are what I call, it's not my term, it's another author's term, what we refer to as the rushing woman syndrome. Like go, 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 perform, make sure you look a certain way, make sure you behave a certain way. That's the modern message that women are getting. That is the evolutionary mismatch with how she was designed. She was designed to go out and tap into that sympathetic nervous system and be able to do great things, and then she was meant to come home and rest. So when we look at what our hunter-gatherer women did, there was a lot more balance of the autonomic nervous system, stress, relaxation, stress, relaxation. Now, fast forward to 2025, we're not getting that. We have women that are on, I call it the patriarchal hex. They've been caught in this, if I do more, I'll be loved more, I'll be more worthy, I'll get, a promotion, I'll make more money, I can make sure that I can take care of my kids, and I can work 60 hours a week. Women in general are being sucked into a culture right now that is destroying not only their nervous system, but their whole hormonal system. That's the evolutionary mismatch.
So how do we begin to understand the complexity and nuances of women's hormonal health versus that of men?
Yeah. Okay, here's the starting point, I feel like. We have to always understand that the human body, for both men and women, has one major priority, and that's survival. So it will do everything it can to make sure it stays alive. Women have a second priority, and that's reproduction. So when a woman is cycling, she needs to make sure that she is keeping herself alive and that she is tending to her reproductive system. The reproductive system actually will respond to whatever environment you put it in. So if you put this female body into a stressful environment, the reproductive system goes, wait, this isn't safe, and it shuts itself down. If you start to feed the reproductive system, which is our hormonal system, a lot of junk food, and you create this, ultra-processed, agitated glutamate response is what it is, where we amp up the nervous system, her reproductive system will shut down. This is PCOS. This is infertility. Mm-hmm. So what we're seeing with women right now is the environment in which we are sitting in, that we are living in, is not working for us. Because our reproductive systems, think of it like antennas, like it's constantly looking around going, am I safe? Am I not safe? Is it okay? Can I release an egg this month? Because, I don't know. It seems like we're still running from a tiger right now. So we have to think about our environment much differently than men do.
And what do we know or not know about how to parse that? Like the environment is impacting the stress response in women, which obviously is a hormonal response to external stimuli. So how much of that is being impulsed by, let's say, the toxins in beauty care products or the air that we're breathing versus our food choices versus the quality of our sleep or other lifestyle habits?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had a really clear answer for it. But since we don't study women, we don't know. Like, it would be beautiful to take a group of women and look at each toxic exposure, whether it was physical, emotional, or chemical, and be able to have some feedback. So you'd have to break each one down. So yeah, we're rubbing endocrine disruptors on our skin all day long. So that's increasing estrogen. So you have all this synthetic estrogen in your body. At the same time, we are like going and working 60-hour work weeks. So now we've raised cortisol. So now that makes us more insulin resistant and shuts down all three sex hormones. So what about traumas? Traumas from childhood that are living and running a woman's nervous system, telling her she's still not safe, even though the trauma happened 20, 30 years ago. I don't think we have a good measurement of it, which is why I call it an evolutionary mismatch, because the modern world is not working for women. Mm-hmm. And because of the secondary need of a female body, we're getting the hit much bigger than men.
Well, we could do, a whole series on childhood trauma or environmental toxins. We're going to have to pick our lane here a little bit. So let's focus for now on the hormonal piece. Yeah. When we're talking about women's hormonal health, we're really talking about three hormones: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and the interplay in between these. So help anybody who's watching or listening kind of understand what's going on here, how it's getting dysregulated, and how we can kind of get it back on track.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with a concept that I put in both books, which is the hormonal hierarchy. So when we look at hormones and how they operate, we need to think of them as like a tag team. One hormone affects another hormone. It can affect it positively or it could affect it negatively. So at the bottom of the hierarchy are the three hormones you just mentioned: estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. The hormone that's going to impact those three the most is insulin. So if you are insulin resistant, you're going to end up with those sex hormones completely off, either too little or too much. PCOS, perfect example. Infertility, perfect example. Really increased menopause symptoms. Yeah, we've got a world of where obesity has become normal, where hemoglobin A1C is up in the upper fives all the time. We have a metabolic mess on our hands. That's why so many women are struggling with menopause symptoms, because their glucose insulin system is completely off. So if we get insulin intact, we start to be able to balance these sex hormones.
So metabolic syndrome or metabolic dysregulation has a downstream impact on just general hormonal health.
Absolutely.
And that is exacerbated in women versus men. Is that that's what you're saying?
Absolutely. Because of this hierarchy. So the minute insulin goes off, because the metabolic system is off, you now are going to throw those sex hormones off.
So we can't even talk about the kind of three big hormones without talking about insulin, basically. You're like insulin, from your point of view, and me being, a layperson, you're saying that insulin is really the kingmaker here.
Yes, and then there's two more above insulin on the hierarchy. So I'm starting with insulin because it is the one that if it goes off, and we are seeing it so huge right now, it's going to have the most direct impact on those three hormones. But above that is cortisol. So if we've got, and let me run through the hierarchy, and I think you'll see the connection here. So we've got, when stress goes up, we become more insulin resistant. And now we're eating more junk food, getting ourselves more metabolically unhealthy. Now we've got the sex hormones off. Above cortisol, the one hormone that can balance all of them in a second is oxytocin. So when you get oxytocin, you calm cortisol down. When you calm cortisol down, you have a better chance of balancing insulin. When you balance insulin, you get those sex hormones in a row. So we have to look at it as a complete picture.
Got it. Before we go any further, maybe define insulin resistance and metabolic health for people who are new to these terms.
Yeah. So insulin resistance, well, let's back up. You eat something, and what happens is your body registers the food coming in, and so all of a sudden the glucose levels in your system go up. As glucose goes up, the message goes to the pancreas to go ahead and make insulin. And the reason insulin is made is because insulin is the way that glucose can get into the cells to be able to energize all the components of the cell. So when insulin and glucose are matched together, insulin kind of does this escort into the cell and is like, here you go. You can go in, you can power up the mitochondria, you can nourish all the cellular parts so that this cell can provide energy and do what it was meant to do. Now, if all day long we're bringing glucose up and bringing glucose up, the pancreas is making more insulin and making more insulin, all of a sudden that cell gets overwhelmed and it's like, I can't take all this glucose and insulin in here. I'm already dealing with what you sent me an hour ago. So it moves that insulin and glucose on to fat. Fat is just storage. That is a big thing I try to get across to women. We sit and we look in the mirror and we start to ridicule ourselves for the extra fat, but your body actually found a really smart place to store it. It just took that glucose and that insulin and put it in another part of your body to save your life. It didn't put it around your heart and lungs and the vital organs. So insulin resistance at its core is your cell's inability to allow glucose and insulin into the cell to be able to energize you. So
obviously, chronic poor dietary habits, too much sugar, too much fat, these things will drive insulin resistance over time. But in addition to that, poor sleep, high stress, chronic over long periods of time will also drive that outcome.
Yeah. So that's why cortisol is above insulin, because once cortisol comes in, the body thinks it's running from a tiger. So it doesn't know that you saw a post on Instagram you didn't like. It just thinks that it needs to get up and move. Cortisol is the hormone meant to make us move. So what it does is it starts to move all the glucose to the muscles, and it blocks the cells from being able to allow glucose to get in. It's got to get out to the muscles so that you can run away. It doesn't know you're sitting on your couch. So cortisol is a signal to tell insulin what to do.
So for that person who is new to these ideas and these terms, who knows, I'm not sleeping that great, I'm definitely stressed out more than I'd like to be, but I don't know if I have metabolic syndrome or if I have insulin resistance. So short of getting a blood test and getting your hemoglobin A1C checked, like how does somebody get to the bottom of it? Or is that the best way?
Well, I like hemoglobin A1C, I think, because it's a 90-day snapshot of this system. So when you're looking at it, you want to look at it over time. I mean, my hemoglobin A1C last time I checked was at 4.7. when I wake up with a fasting glucose of somewhere around 90, like I know that I'm actually insulin sensitive. But then you could give me 3 days of eating junk food and you would see my fasting glucose go up, but you wouldn't see my hemoglobin A1C go up because it's a 90-day snapshot.
I see.
So that's why I like that one, because everybody deserves a cheat day. Everybody deserves a vacation. But I want to know what you're doing, that system's doing over 90 days.
And what is the difference between a woman and a man when it comes to insulin sensitivity?
Okay, it's complicated. And a woman's body doesn't stay insulin sensitive all month long. If we're talking about cycling women who have a reproductive system, her insulin sensitivity is not the same all month long. Let me explain it. So the front half of her cycle, day 1, all the way till she releases an egg somewhere in ovulation, like day 15, she is going to be more insulin sensitive. So her body's going to be able to use the glucose insulin system in a very efficient way. The back half of her cycle, specifically a week before her period, she's making more progesterone. And progesterone actually needs glucose in order to be able to, it's like an ingredient, it needs to make itself. To have enough progesterone, you have to have glucose. So you are more insulin resistant the week before your cycle because of progesterone's needs.
So basically, the body is taking out an insurance policy to make sure that it's getting the glucose that it needs when it needs it most at that phase of the cycle.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I've never heard that before.
But check this out. Every single woman I've ever talked to will all say, we crave carbs, we crave chocolate. The sugar is so bad that week before our cycle. And this is going back to what you originally said, which is where we think something's wrong with us. Like, I wasn't hungry the last 20 days. Now I'm completely hungry and all I want to do is eat every carb in the house. Well, that's your body saying, I need you to raise glucose so that I can make progesterone, so that progesterone can shed the uterine lining so that you can have a period.
Wow. And what happens when you're on birth control? How does that impact all of this?
Well, it's a manipulation of the system, a synthetic manipulation. And you will have a regular cycle, so you would just follow whatever the new pattern of your cycle is. It's just not your natural pattern, but the same rules apply.
I see.
Yeah.
How does fasting play into all of this? Where does this kind of intersect as a means of taking control of this process and setting yourself up for better health outcomes?
Yeah, so fasting's really excellent for the female on day 1 through like day 20 of her cycle. Because estrogen, let's just pull each sex hormone out here. Estrogen likes you to be insulin sensitive. Estrogen likes it when glucose is low. So you can fast, you can do keto, you can do all of that when estrogen is coming in. And her big debut, she builds when day 1 is, by the way, is the day you bleed. A lot of women don't know that. So the day you bleed is day 1 of your cycle. So now over the next 15 days, estrogen is building. She will peak somewhere around day 12. When she peaks, all that 12 days, you need to be insulin sensitive. Because that's the environment estrogen can thrive in. So let's use infertility as an example. So one of the things we know about infertility is there's a metabolic piece to it. So if you have a high hemoglobin A1C, there's a good chance that you're not allowing estrogen, your natural estrogen stores to hit a peak in order for an egg to be released. So I always give them pronouns because they're literally like characters in our body. And if estrogen, and I feel like their PR team, like if estrogen could speak, she would say, keep glucose low so that I can build, and then I can release an egg. And progesterone would be over here saying, no, I actually need you to keep glucose high so I can shed the uterine lining so you can start the cycle again. So in Fast Like a Girl, I called them twins. They're like twins that look the same. We call them the same thing, but they have vastly different environments and personalities they thrive in.
So what is the efficacy of fasting in this environment? Like, what is it doing for the woman that's beneficial?
So if she does it at the right time of her cycle, it's bringing her back into insulin sensitivity. So let's break this down so we don't get off course too much. When you eat a meal, your body's going to release insulin. It's going to take that glucose. They're going to come together. They're going to drive it into the cell, and the cell's going to use it for energy. That's when you eat a well-balanced meal, which we can unpack what that is later. When you eat an ultra-processed meal, or you eat a meal that's really high in glucose, what ends up happening is that insulin says, I can't, just like we said before, I can't get all of that glucose into the cell. So I'm going to get as much as I can in there, and then I'm going to go store it somewhere else, and it stores it in fat. So then you add fasting into the picture. And what happens with fasting is the body starts to sense that glucose isn't going up. And so it's like, wait a second, glucose hasn't gone up in a long period of time, but you know what? I stored some glucose a long time ago. I stored it around the belly. I stored it around the back of the arms. I stored it in the booty. I'm going to go burn that. And it is actually a trigger that happens within the liver where it tells the body to go take what it's already stored years ago. So when we look at the menstrual cycle, we know that when we put you into a fasted state at the right part of your cycle, you are giving your intelligent body an opportunity to burn the excess that perhaps was there from years before or from days before. So it's like cleaning the trash. It's like taking out the excess so that you can start the whole cycle again and eat. And then all of a sudden the body's sensitive, it's able to work it out. And then you go and you build those stores back up.
Right. And you do this is appropriate for that 3-week period of time, but not during that final week of the cycle.
Right. Yeah.
What does retirement even mean to you? Does that compute?
No.
What if we've all been thinking about our future wrong? What if there is no finish line? What if there's only a through line? I'm Rich Roll, endurance athlete turned wellness advocate. I'm breaking out of the studio to meet up with some extraordinary humans, all at different stages in their lives, all with one thing in common. They have no plans to slow down. We'll dive deep and find out what it takes, physically.
Tennis is like relax and then explode. This is like explode and then relax.
Mentally.
We struggle with health. We struggle with mental health. It's part of having a body and having a mind.
And financially.
Should I spend money today or save it for tomorrow? The question you want to ask is, what am I going to regret in the future?
To keep doing the things we love.
I don't hate that pressure. You know, I see it as a gift. This is what we signed up for.
And this is the action plan. This episode is brought to you by Whoop. This thing right here. So I got to spend time with Will Ahmed, Whoop's founder and CEO, as well as dozens of key team members who pulled the curtain back to give me a rare behind the scenes look at what they do, how they do it, why they do it the way they do it, the culture, the intentionality behind the technology, the exciting innovations that are on Whoop's near horizon. And now the all-new Whoop is here, and the recent upgrades are dramatic. In addition to the sensor now being 7% smaller, the battery life now extends to a remarkable 14 days. And the new Whoop MG even boasts a heart rate screener with on-demand ECG readings, so you can monitor your heart anytime and share your results with your doctor. It's the only wearable that offers a complete view of your body, not just for tracking, but for insights that shape your decisions about your health, especially when recovery matters most. And you can join now at join.whoop.com/roll. That's join.whoop.com/roll. There's many different types of fasting.
Yeah.
It's confusing for a lot of people. Time-restricted eating, intermittent fasting, water-only fast, prolonged fasting. When you're talking about fasting, like what are you talking about specifically?
Yeah, so I'm time-restricted fasting. And in Fast Like a Girl, I map out 6 different lengths. So from the research I've seen from our community that's been fasting, what we see is the longer you fast, more healing mechanisms turn on, because it's the ultimate hormetic stressor for our metabolic system, which, just so everybody knows, that's just the good stressor that causes the system to go find it elsewhere. So the longer you go, the more you start triggering these different healing switches. And it's everything from 17 hours, the body starts to realize, hey, food and nutrients haven't come in. So I'm going to stimulate autophagy so we can clean the inner parts of the cell out. At 24 hours, there's research showing that the intestinal tract's getting itself ready for food. And so it increases intestinal stem cells so that it can start to make the environment within the gut ready for when food comes in. Mm-hmm. At 36 hours, there's incredible research showing that over time, regular 36 hours fast causes the body to go get that stubborn weight that it can't seem to burn on its own. It will go in and it'll actually burn that because it hasn't had glucose go up in 36 hours. 48 hours, the whole dopamine system gets reset because you got to go be motivated to go find food. So the whole dopamine system redoes itself. And then at 72 hours, the immune system resets. So the longer you go without food, what you're doing is you're telling your body to turn on these switches so that it can be ready when food comes back.
Why then would the advice be time-restricted eating, these, windows, whether it's, 17 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours, versus just 72 hours? This is what it's going to be. This is how you get the most bang for your buck and the most benefit from undergoing, this. It's difficult for a lot of people to do this.
Well, 72 hours is a big endeavor. That's not it. Yeah. Why wouldn't you just go to the best and do the 72? Most people aren't going to do 72 on a regular basis. So it's a big fast. So I'm looking at what I call building a fasting lifestyle. And that's what people used Fast Like a Girl for, which is every day you're picking from these 6 different length fasts and asking yourself, am I going, 15 hours is your typical intermittent fasting? Am I going 17 to get some autophagy? Do I need to reset my gut? And you learn how to use them as different tools to be able to heal yourself, a little bit like a supplement, but you're actually tapping into your own body's healing. So you could do one 72-hour fast once a year, twice a year, and just clean the whole system. But we live in such a toxic world that these little microdoses of fasting on a daily basis are able to tap into these self-regulatory processes.
Yeah. Do you know Alan Goldhammer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had him on here a couple times. The water only, very long, 30-day fasts. You can't argue with the results that he's getting.
No.
He's obviously dealing with very ill patients who are coming in with long-term, very serious chronic lifestyle illnesses. But the reversals that he sees are quite remarkable. It's undeniable that something is happening here for anybody who's questioning the efficacy of this.
I feel the same way with our community. When I first started teaching this on YouTube, I was a newbie to YouTube. I was a newbie to fasting, but I was reading the science. I was applying it on my patients. So I just used social media. We would do these things called Fast Training Week. And I would say, here's the fast we're going to do for 5 days. I want you all at the end of 5 days to give me feedback and tell me what happened to you. And we did that for years and years and years, and millions of people participated in this Fast Training Week. And what the results we got back were, people were dropping hundreds of pounds. People were getting off medications. People were getting mental clarity back. I actually ended up hiring a team of people to gather all the comments because I was trying to look for patterns and see which fast was working best for which specific condition. But it blew me away. And when Fast Like a Girl came out in the world, I was like, okay, I've seen it on my YouTube. I've seen it in clinical practice. Now let's see what happens when people get this book. And it just reviews poured on to all of the different channels with the same results. Something was going on when you took food out of the equation. The body was actually able to finally heal itself. And I don't think we give that enough credit.
Mm-hmm. And what is the lasting impact of this? I mean, it's not surprising if you're going to do, a very long water-only fast that you're going to lose weight. But what is the impact? What does the evidence say about regulating insulin sensitivity or correcting metabolic dysfunction? Do these things rubber band back to where they were before? Do you get on a new track where you really are on top of it in a new way? Because I think, especially for people of my age, like the idea that you could reverse even type 2 diabetes was anathema, right? And now obviously this is possible. So what do you know about that aspect of it?
Well, multiple studies show that it's a lasting effect. Where we have the greatest research is from Ramadan, because we see fasting over 30 days. So when I first started going into all the studies, it was just really interesting how that's where we had these longer term studies that we could look at over a 30-day. And they were doing sundown to sun up to sundown, fairly short fasts, but we saw it over a longer period of time. So the metabolic results were lasting when done over a longer period of time like that, which is how I started to look at it not as a one-off, like you were explaining before, or like you were saying with Dr. Goldhammer. I wanted to look at, what would happen if you just gave people the opportunity to dip into different fasting styles through every day and then map that to a woman's cycle? What would the long-term benefit be? Now, we don't have research on that map to the cycle, but what I witnessed was a lasting result. I've even witnessed a lasting result with a 3-day water fast. You do it once and it unsticks your weight, and now your metabolic switch is more primed. So, as far as long term, it really has a staying power more than any other diet that I've ever seen. And what's really interesting to me is that if you put me on the keto diet, you put me on, any diet of any kind, it gets harder and harder and harder to stick to that diet. What I've noticed with fasting is it gets easier and easier. The more you prime your fasting muscle, it just becomes second nature, and people can stick with it over time, which is also giving them a better result.
Explain this idea of metabolic switching.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like we need to go there to kind of get the big. So you have two metabolic systems. One that you initiate when you eat, and I call it the sugar burner system. And one you initiate when you fast, and I call it the fat burner system. Just like you have two nervous systems, you have the parasympathetic, you have the sympathetic. Our body is meant to go in and out of these different rhythms. So when I eat, I stimulate my sugar burner system. Glucose goes up, and then, insulin kicks in. We talked about that. Now glucose and insulin are coming down. And at about 8 hours without glucose going up, the body is going to start to metabolically switch over to the fat burning system. That switch takes about 4 hours. So 12 hours after the last piece of food going in your mouth, you're now over here in fat burning. And your liver is trying to burn fat to make a product called a ketone. And then the ketone goes up into the brain, turns hunger off, and starts to stimulate the brain, stimulates GABA, calms you. And your body now will derive fuel from burning fat. You were meant to switch between these two systems. We weren't meant to activate glucose all day in the sugar burner system, which is obesity, and we weren't meant to access fat burning all day, which is what I saw with people who started fasting too much. We're meant to go in and out of those two switches. So if I tie this to your question before, because I really want people to understand the lasting effect of this, is that the more you tap into this fat burner system, the better these results will last.
One thing you talk a lot about is there's no one-size-fits-all solution. We're all an N of one. So is this appropriate for everybody? And if not, what are the, whens and whys and whatabouts that apply to this?
Great question. So first one that I always will say is if you're pregnant, not your tool. Fasting is not your tool. Really work on—
I can't imagine. You're trying to feed this fetus. Right. Like your body needs nourishment.
Yeah. But you'd be surprised how many people
fast on pregnant.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're terrified of like the weight gain that comes with being pregnant?
Yeah, or they were fasting beforehand and then they don't want to give it up because it's an amazing tool, or they're nauseous all day long, so they don't want to eat, especially in the first trimester. So yeah, we've had the millions of questions we've had over the years. That has been a big one.
All right, so pregnant off the table.
Yeah.
What about somebody who's trying to get pregnant?
Yeah, trying to get pregnant there's a lot of nuance to it. I would say back half, let's just make it simple. Back half of your cycle after ovulation, don't be fasting.
Mm-hmm. What about women who are struggling with their fertility, who are infertile?
So that's when you really want to look at fasting.
Because?
So in Fast Like a Girl, I created something called a fasting cycle, which is front half of your cycle, you fast. Ovulation, you don't fast as much. After ovulation, then you go back to fasting, and then the week before your period, you don't fast at all. So I've split it into 4 different phases. And what we found, it was really interesting. Where I came up with it is I had an employee that was struggling to get pregnant, and every time she would go in to her doctor's office, they were like, your BMI is too high. You're not going to get pregnant. And I was learning fasting at the time. So I said, how about we fast you day 1 through day 10? Then we have you lean into more food during ovulation. Then day 16, when you come out of ovulation, till the back half of your cycle, how about we have you not fast and eat more food? And I said, let's just try a rhythm of this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, maybe 90 days, let's see what happens. Within 30 days, she was pregnant.
Wow.
Because she primed estrogen. Estrogen was given what she needed, so she was able to release an egg finally. And then the back half, she was minding progesterone. Progesterone got what it needed, so it was able to help with the implantation of the egg. So then I was like, well, one person, that's not a lot. Let me go try it with a handful of my patients. We did 5 in total, still not a big study, and found that every single time somebody followed the fasting cycle, where they were going in and out of no fast, then fasting, they got pregnant. So when Fast Like a Girl came out, I was like, okay, well, let's see what the world does with it. And again, you can go read the reviews. It was same results.
Yeah, that's traumatic.
Yeah.
That's traumatic.
So
obviously, if you have an eating disorder, this is problematic. Yeah. I'm sure you have a lot to say about, that's sort of an obvious case. But, what about in the athlete case? I think this is tricky, right? An athlete, especially if you're training hard, and it depends on your sport and what phase of training you're in, you need to replenish your body and nourish yourself, or you're not going to be able to recover and repair your body so that you can get the gains. That's the purpose of the training.
Yep, but really well said. And again, if we can just look at fasting as like a tool, think of it like a supplement. So you take it some days and you may not take it on other days. So when we look at it through that lens, it's not like you're locked in. I fast 15 hours. I'm going to go run a marathon. I still fast 15 hours. You got to pull that fasting tool out and know when you're going to use it, when you're not going to use it. On the longer endurance days, you are not going to use fasting as your tool. You're going to want to fuel beforehand so that you can make sure that you have the nutrients needed to go that day. Then maybe the next day's a recovery day, then you're going to fast a little longer. This is exactly what we did, Chris and I did with Jesse's group. I mean, we were really looking because he would have them on these extreme workouts. And I would take their whole workout protocol and I would say, okay, he's got you doing pretty long runs on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So I don't want you fasting on those days. You got shorter workouts. So let's do it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I want you to fast a little bit longer. And we found as a recovery tool for those extreme athletes, it was incredible.
That's interesting. When you mentioned Chris, you're talking about Chris Houth, who's my longtime coach. And one of the things that he always says, and certainly said to me many times, is that during intense phases of training, you are fueling not necessarily for that workout, but the workout tomorrow. So even if you want to do your fasted workout, you could do that and maybe you'd feel great and even great for the rest of the day. But you really have to be thinking about what the workout is going to be tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that.
Yeah.
Because from an endurance athlete perspective, it's all about like being able to wake up and do it again and doing it again and doing it again. And it's not about any individual workout. And so being consistent obviously wins the game.
Yep.
And anything that you do to interfere or disrupt that consistency becomes problematic.
Right. Okay, so let's put it into an action-oriented way. Let's say Monday, you're going on your big workout. And so you eat breakfast, you don't fast, you do your long run. Let's just pick running. You're going to run really long. You're going to come home, you're going to do your recovery workout. The next day on Tuesday, you might do an intermittent fast of 15 hours. Okay, why would you do that? You would do it to bring the inflammation down, to get the body to repair itself, just a short little fast, 15 hours. And then when you open up your eating window and you eat, then you're going to make sure that you eat enough because maybe Wednesday you're now going to use it as you're not going to fast because you're going on another hard day. So this is why I'm like, you have to look at the fasting window as like a supplement. It's a little tool you're using to help the body heal itself. But then when you eat, you've got to eat. This, and it doesn't matter if you're an extreme athlete or a menopausal woman. I'm not here to say that fasting is like this incredible thing and you should do it all the time. It is a tool that you should know when to pull it out and when to leave it out.
Yeah, a tool in a much broader, bigger toolbox.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Where does the when of eating come into all of this? I just know from my flirtations and experiments with intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating that the when is really important. Like I know for a fact, at least with my body, that if I don't eat all day and then I eat and then I'm starving and then I eat a big dinner and then I'm exhausted and I go right to bed. Mm-hmm. If I look at my Whoop data, the stress levels are insane throughout the night. They're very high. And also through experimenting with CGMs, the blood sugar goes haywire. Like I'm like, this is not serving me.
And in that scenario, you fasted.
And I would think without that, like, oh, I'm doing, I went 17 hours or whatever it is, like I'm doing the right thing.
Okay. But in that scenario, did you fast in the morning and then you ate in the afternoon? Evening?
In that scenario, I pretty much didn't eat all day until dinner.
Right. Okay. Was it dark out, light out? Do you not remember?
Probably like twilight.
Okay.
Like maybe 7. I mean, it depends on the time of year, right? Okay. But probably dark. And I know the dark thing is a big deal.
Yeah. So let's look at it this way. You're taking an eating window. If you're going to fast 17 hours, right, then you're looking at a 7-hour eating window. So you're taking that eating window and you get to put it anywhere you want to put it. So in that scenario, I would say you would have been better off with an eating window somewhere between like 10 and 5. So then that night after 5, you're not eating. You're now in a fasted state. You go to the next morning and you maybe don't eat until 10 again. You've got your 17-hour eating window. We are meant to eat in the light. We are not meant to eat in the dark. When melatonin shows up, you get more insulin resistant. As Sachin Panda told me, he's like, the pancreas gets sleepy when melatonin comes in.
I know, but I'm only hungry when it gets dark out.
Well, that's
This
a
is the
rich problem.
I know.
I can't help you with that.
It is true also that when you sleep really well and you feel rested, like your cravings are very much held at bay. I know that when I don't sleep well and I feel off, like that's when the cravings become more difficult to manage.
Yeah, agreed. And I think a good rule is 2 to 3 hours before bed, we should not be eating.
That's so hard for me.
Yeah.
That's the hardest piece for me.
Most people.
Talk to me about Ozempic. Like most people, let's be honest, get excited about something like fasting because really what they want to do is lose weight. Metabolic health, insulin resistant, these are like abstract ideas. But I know what I look like when I look in the mirror, and what I really want to do is like shed the belly fat. Fasting seems like a good way to go. Now we have Ozempic. Oh, I don't need to fast. I can just do that. Or that makes fasting easier. So how do you think about where that fits into this whole thing?
Well, I'll tell you my first reaction when Ozempic started to really gain traction is I kept walking around asking everybody, tell me what you're noticing on it. And they're like, I'm just not hungry. And my response was, well, that's what a fasting lifestyle does. When you learn how to use this metabolic switch, where you're taking your eating window and deciding where it goes every day, leaving these longer periods for fasting, your hunger goes down. Because you're making ketones in this fasted state. When you make ketones, it goes up to the brain and kills hunger. So to me, what I see is that the symptoms or the positive experience of Ozempic is very much similar to what I saw with millions of people with a fasting lifestyle. Hunger stopped, body burned fat. So with that in mind, it appeared to be completely useless to me because I was seeing people with really chronic obesity problems, bad cravings, couldn't get over ultra-processed food addiction. And all I had to do is teach them a metabolic switch and they lost weight. So why would they spend $800 to $1,000 on a medication with some interesting side effects to be able to lose weight?
Because you don't have to go through the hard suffering part.
Okay, in the beginning.
But that's the way it always is.
Of course.
We'll do anything to avoid that part.
Even pay $800?
I don't know. For a lot of people, apparently the answer is yes. Mindy,
apparently,
you know this.
Yes.
We live in Los Angeles.
Right.
But essentially what you're saying is, look, I've got a natural way of achieving the same result.
Bingo. It is the same thing. So we actually then started doing on our YouTube channel, I started doing more videos. How do you get off Ozempic? Because where my brain went to was, okay, maybe if I could just, this kind of tied into what you and I were talking about before, maybe if I could be welcoming to the thought that Ozempic's helping a lot of people, which it is, then how do I integrate the fasting lifestyle into Ozempic? And the way I looked at it was, okay, somebody's on Ozempic, teach them fasting lifestyle, and then create a plan to get off Ozempic. Use it as like training wheels for your metabolic system. And that worked really, really well. Because the goal of any medication, the goal should not to be on it all the time, over and over and over again. You haven't corrected the lifestyle problem if you have to be on it over and over and over again.
And time will tell what these downstream side effects are or aren't. It's not a black or white thing. I mean, certainly people who are morbidly obese and have tried everything and have failed, like this is a life-saving thing for them.
Agreed.
So that's one thing. But if you're just trying to trim down a little bit because you got a wedding coming up or you're going to walk some red carpet, I don't know what the risk analysis is there.
Yeah. Well, that's where fasting lifestyle, I mean, you can drop weight so fast, just all of a sudden starting to do longer fasts. Maybe you have a wedding on Saturday. What you end up doing is 17-hour fasts starting on Monday. By Saturday, a lot of people will notice they've dropped 5 pounds and they're ready to go.
Setting aside fasting for the moment, what do people get wrong about weight loss?
I think my first thing that we get wrong about weight loss is what weight is. And I want to go back to what I said before, because this is one that has freed so many women, which is when we look in the mirror and we see fat, We translate that in our brain to undisciplined. I did something wrong. I can't stick to my diet. And we start to turn on ourselves. But if your body could like stand next to you and speak to you in that moment, what your body would say is, hey, you gave me a lot of excess. You gave me too much glucose, too many toxins, too many hormones. I didn't know what to do with them with that. So I didn't really want to put it around your heart and lungs and your liver. So I put it around your belly to save your life. So when we look in the mirror or we get on the scale and we see too much weight, can we start to translate that into, I have too much excess of something? That's the first thing that people get wrong with weight loss, especially women. We think it's our fault. We did something wrong. But the way that the food industry is now, the way the stress levels are, back to the evolutionary mismatch, that what's happening is all this excess is going into fat. So if I double down on calorie restriction, or I double down on working out too much, which is raising my cortisol levels even more, what we're now seeing is the doubling down is not working.
Why not?
Because, for the female body, it's cortisol. You're raising cortisol. So now cortisol is so high because you're decided that you need to run 10 miles instead of 5. And your body's like, wait a second, now we're back running from a tiger, so I need to be more insulin resistant.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think an analogous example just from my personal experience is, look, if I'm training super hard, like I can eat a lot and I continue to lose weight because like I'm just pushing my body so hard. Yep. But there's an intermediary phase where maybe I'm not training quite that hard, but my hunger is so intense and I'm eating a lot and I'll end up gaining more weight than I would suspect. And it works in reverse of what you would think. And now, like, we were talking earlier, I'm recovering from back surgery and I'm really not doing anything. Like I'm walking and I thought like, I'm going to balloon up, I'm just going to get super fat. And yeah, I've gained a little bit of weight, but my hunger has gone down because my stress levels are down. I'm not pushing myself. So perhaps there's a greater hormonal balance that is helping me to kind of manage this period of inactivity. Without like, becoming obese or something.
You're primed for some intermittent fasting is what that I just heard.
Yeah, I know. What comes to mind when you think about plant protein powders? Well, I don't know about you, but for years, it's basically been thought of as this barely tolerable product. You want the benefits, but you're basically choking down chalk-flavored disappointment. Well, Momentous actually decided to change the game on this, and they've done it with their newly upgraded 100% plant protein formula. They took something that was already good, in my opinion, and actually made it incredible. These people and this company are truly, absolutely obsessive when it comes to quality, and as a result, they have earned my trust. Every batch is NSF certified for sport. They are tested for heavy metals, harmful additives, everything Olympic level standards. So if you're like me and you want to take supplements that are made by and used by the best in the world. So if you're ready to upgrade your protein game, head to livemomentous.com/richroll or use the code richroll at checkout for 35% off your first subscription. Movement has shaped my life. It's a teacher, it's a mirror into the soul, and it's a path that not only connects you more deeply with yourself, but also with others and the world we share. All paths require tools, and those tools matter. That's why I've partnered with On, a brand that honors this movement path with premium sportswear to support it. Everything that On makes is next level in design, clean, and always with function top of mind, lightweight, breathable, and built to adapt. It's gear that disappears on the body, so you can fully drop into the experience of movement. Head to on.com/richroll to explore their performance-driven collection. The overall kind of global idea here is women empowerment and connecting women with their own well-being in a way that isn't, outsourcing it to other people, experts, professionals, but really encouraging women to look inward and take responsibility for their own path.
Yeah.
What's behind it? Was there an experience that you had or a series of experiences that led you to this sort of field as being so important?
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to thank you for seeing me, because that was really well stated. That is the mission of helping women just understand this machinery. So to answer your question, of course, it always starts with your own disempowerment moment. And I was a competitive tennis player in college. I played on a scholarship at the University of Kansas, and I ended up having compartment syndrome in my lower legs. Are you familiar?
What is that? No.
Yeah. So Mary Decker, do you remember Mary Decker?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she had it, and it's when you do too much pounding on your feet, and the inner compartments of your lower legs start to swell. It's like the next step beyond shin splints, and these compartments become permanently inflamed, and it feels like your lower legs are just going to explode, and the pain is just nonstop all day long. And so it's from too much exercise. And so what they did is they went in and they did a fasciotomy. So they just cut the fascia so that the lower leg can actually inflame. And they were like, 6 weeks, you're going to be good, back out on the court just in time for the season. And within 4 weeks, I couldn't get out of bed. And I was just exhausted. And my mom took one look at me and was like, something's not right. And we go into this specialist. He does all these brain scans and looks at, what's going on with the healing power of my body, and like I can't think straight, I can't talk straight, I have no energy. And he sits down at this big mahogany desk across from my mom and I'm 19 years old. And he's like, well, you have chronic fatigue syndrome. And my mom was like, she's this short little mighty woman. And she was like, great, what do we do about it? And he pulls out a list of medications and he says, well, and they have hash marks next to of all the times they worked. And he's like, well, we'll start with this medication and see what happens. And if that doesn't work, we'll go to the next one, and then we'll go to the next one. And my mom says, well, how long is that going to take? And he goes, well, it could be months to years. And my mom literally turns to me and she says, don't listen to him. And she says, thank you very much, picks me up and takes me, that was down in Redondo Beach, takes me to her homeopathic MD in Santa Monica. We walk in and she's like, Dr. Luke needs to see her right away. Dr. Luke stands in front of me and he says, here are all the foods you need to eat to heal, and here are all the foods you need to avoid to heal. And it was basically the ketogenic diet: meat, vegetables, get all carbs, all fruit out. And I went to his office every day where he retrained my whole lifestyle. Within 2 weeks, I was back on a plane. Within 4 weeks, I was back playing tennis, all from a major lifestyle change and one doctor believing in me.
So what did you take away from that?
That I could heal myself. If I look at my lifestyle, I can start to heal myself. I even started doing a bunch of meditation and visualization, and I just started looking at all the different ways I could tap into my own healing.
I had Lisa Mosconi on here, and it was really remarkable to hear from her the extent to which there's a lack of study and understanding when it comes to women's health, and in particular, women's hormonal health, and what we know and don't know about perimenopause, menopause, et cetera. I feel like this is something that should have been well understood a long time ago, and we're only now at the beginnings of really grasping meaning from this in a way that can be translated to women in such a way that they can think differently about the various stages of their lives and take action on their own behalf, during those various phases.
No, I mean, we have a one-size-fits-all healthcare system. So everything is done. I mean, even if you look at the way medications are dished out, statins, blood pressure medications, all of those have been tested mostly on men. They haven't been tested on women. So everything is, you have high blood pressure, here's a pill. You have high cholesterol, here's a statin. I mean, again, not to keep bringing it back to fasting, but that's how Fast Like a Girl was really evolved out of everybody got into this intermittent fasting thing, and it was like, oh, I should do it exactly how my husband or my brother or my best friend does it, and come to find out that the female body needed it different. But our healthcare system is not taking women's needs, not just physiological, but emotional needs into consideration.
Talk to me about, back to hormonal health in women, the differences, the phases that women go through, the first, 20 some odd years of their life, into the 30s, then into perimenopause and menopause. Like, what's going on? What do women need to understand about how to take care of themselves?
Right.
And think about like their energy and where they're placing their attention during these phases.
Yeah. So it all goes back to estrogen. We have to remember that when you go into puberty, now you've got estrogen coming in on that first half of your cycle. And estrogen helps a woman, like when estrogen's around, it helps a woman become more insulin sensitive. That insulin glucose system is working well. Like estrogen, I call it a phrase I got using a while back that people really responded to was estrogen has a girl gang. She has a bunch of neurochemicals that she influenced. And two of them in the metabolic system was glucose and insulin. So every time estrogen came in, you were insulin sensitive. So as long as you have a cycle, just make sure that you're working with estrogen when she comes in the front half of your cycle. When you go into perimenopause, estrogen starts to go on a wild ride. And so she's up one day, she's down the next day, and all of a sudden you start gaining weight for no particular reason. This is the most frustrating thing for a 40-year-old woman who was able to control her weight through certain foods in her 30s. She pops into her 40s, and now she's eating those same foods, but she's gaining weight. That's because estrogen is slowly starting to decline. As estrogen declines, now you're becoming more insulin resistant, which is what menopausal belly weight is. It's all the extra weight that women are gaining is because estrogen is exiting. Now, I believe in the research I've done, and you mentioned this with Lisa Mosconi, if we look at what happens all the way on the other side, postmenopausal years, and we track that to evolutionary biology, we start to see, and I know Lisa spoke about this on your podcast, we start to see something called the grandmother hypothesis, where when women in the hunter-gatherer days, when they went into their postmenopausal years, they actually were out foraging, and from what I can tell, it's about 17 hours total every day. They do a 7-hour trek is what they were doing. The Hadza tribe does it currently. This is one of the few modern day hunter-gatherers we have. And so they didn't have fuel to do that. So they had to go into the fat-burning state and start to use ketones as fuel. So when we look at it over the evolutionary span of a woman, okay, your period comes in, when estrogen's around, then make sure that you're priming that system. When estrogen goes away, then we need to start to look at fasting and leaning into ketones to get our mental clarity back, to be able to burn fat, because as estrogen exited, your metabolic system got completely decimated and is less effective at doing what it was doing. So it needs that ketone more.
Where does hormone replacement therapy come into this?
Yeah, I think it's really beneficial that we're having these conversations about HRT. I think we need to continue to have a conversation about HRT in conjunction with lifestyle. So when we look at the trajectory of HRT, just as little as 5 years ago, we weren't talking about HRT. We were like, we don't talk about menopause. People still thought it was dangerous. Then people like Lisa Mosconi came out and said, hey, the brain needs estrogen. We want to revisit the HRT as a therapy. And all of a sudden, now you have women that are lathering themselves with cream and patches, hoping that it's going to take all the symptoms away. But there is a massive biological shift, a neurochemical upgrade that is happening, a massive change within the female body that requires a different lifestyle. And so that lifestyle needs to be one where fasting is brought back in, because the ketone is a tool that if you hadn't been using it before, you're going to want to start to think about using it now to get that mental clarity back online and to be able to burn fat. So where I line up with HRT is when we say, yes, we need to bring it back into the conversation and see if it's appropriate for you.
But this is not a panacea, fix-all situation.
That's right.
It is one thing that you can do in this toolbox that includes fasting.
Yep.
But what are the other pillars on this lifestyle shift of the things that women need to be thinking about and preparing themselves for when they reach that age?
Yeah. Well, as you go through the process, stress is a big one. Most women go roaring into their 40s. And they are like so stressed out and stuck in their sympathetic nervous system that now estrogen, all the sex hormones are starting to go away, and women are raw. I mean, there's like a edge to us because we don't have the same neurochemical cushion. We don't have estrogen brought in dopamine, estrogen brought in serotonin, estrogen brought in acetylcholine. Like there's over 10 neurochemicals that estrogen provided you with that are now gone. And your nervous system is going to be highly sensitive. I believe there's a reason for this, an evolutionary reason. So if you're still working insane hours, you're still pounding the treadmill trying to make sure that you drop weight, you're still in a high-stressed lifestyle, your symptoms are going to be pretty gnarly.
It's interesting because all those behaviors are intended to ameliorate those symptoms, right?
That's right.
And in fact, what you're saying is they're exacerbating them?
Yes, yes, yes.
And so the lifestyle shift is what? Towards a softer, gentler way, basically.
Yeah. Well, let's go to workout. So estrogen stimulated collagen and creatine. So all of a sudden now collagen and creatine are gone. And so does that mean you should keep doing 100-mile endurance races? You don't have that same cushion in your joints. So women are like bringing in the collagen and creatine, trying to keep it up so that they can continue that same intensity. But what we look at when we see evolutionarily wise, they weren't running 100 miles, our hunter and gatherer friends. They were walking every day. They were going with other women in community, foraging for food. They would often carry like a toddler on their back or have, a back of tubers was a big thing that the grandmothers back in the hunter-gatherer days went and got. And so their fitness looked very different than the 52-year-old woman who's like, I got to drop some weight. I'm going to train for the next marathon. And there was more of a balance to it.
And how much of that transfers to men?
In what way?
In other words, similarly, the male kind of like hormonal landscape is perhaps a little bit less complex, but don't those same principles apply to the aging male?
Not as acutely. Now, first thing I'll say is I'm not a testosterone expert. For men, when we look at a male's hormonal cycle, it's pretty consistent. Testosterone comes in every 15, 20 minutes. You're on a 24-hour cycle. How does testosterone relate to collagen and creatine? From what I know, it doesn't have the same intimate connection. Now, again, I haven't studied testosterone, collagen, creatine in men. So now that doesn't mean that you're going to have, if you pound too much, the joints are going to wear out. Mm-hmm. I do believe that we have overdone exercise. And the more we go into these extreme endurance races, that you are going to see a breakdown of the human body because it's not natural to do over and over again.
What do men need to understand to better support the women in their lives through these various stages? Yeah. Like, we don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
If women, are lacking proper understanding and education around this, like the men are just completely in the dark. Yeah. So we're just reacting to a situation that we completely don't understand. And that obviously prevents us from being supportive partners.
Yeah. Thank you for asking the question. And I really think we need to bring men into the conversation. I've had so many men reach out to us and say, could you write me a manual for my wife? And I think it's really as simple as this. When you have a cycling woman in your life, whether it's a teenage daughter or a wife, she is not designed to have the same moods, the same behaviors all month long. That is not in her design. So when estrogen comes in, we get all these girl gang members, we get dopamine, serotonin, all of that. And so you're going to find front half of her cycle, she's going to be a lot more jovial. You move into ovulation. Now you've got estrogen at her peak, you've got testosterone at its peak, and you've got a little bit of progesterone. I always say the most neurochemically magic time for a woman is day 10 to day 15. If you want to connect with her, you want to resolve a conflict with her, she's neurochemically locked and loaded and ready to do that because all those neurochemicals are there. Week before her period, now you've got progesterone coming in, and progesterone brings GABA with her, and GABA calms her. So she's meant to be a little more laid back. She's not going to handle stress the same way. She's meant to slow down. She's meant to eat more carbs. So when she doesn't do that, that's when you're going to see the irritability. So teenage daughter, she's irritable. It's day 27 of her cycle. Then you want to take note that encouraging her to rest and chill out is a great time, not coming to her and trying to solve why her grades aren't where you want them to be. I would never do that at day 27 of her cycle. Go do it at day 12 when she has all these neurochemicals. So once you understand how these neurochemicals affect her behaviors and her moods, you will undernd the woman that you're living with.
But that presupposes, from the male point of view, that I know when, when the period is happening. It's I don't know,
It would be a great conversation.
I could ask my wife. I'm not going to ask my daughter.
Yep.
So that's that's off the table.
And so why? Why should it be off the table?
It shouldn't, of course, but it's a delicate subject, with a teenage daughter.
Believe me, I've had one of those.
The zone of privacy, is very important. And as a dad, I need to respect that and want to respect that, and I don't want to be, I don't want to intrude. So there has to be a way to broach that. So that you can be helpful.
Here's the way I would approach it. My daughter is 26 now, so I wish I had known more of this stuff when she was 16. But you could just say, hey, I brought this woman on the podcast. We got talking about this today, and I realized that I don't even know where you are in your cycle. Do you notice your moods are different? Do you notice your cravings are different? I find this really interesting. Mm-hmm. And that would
a good way
open up the conversation.
That's a good way in.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So that way you can now be a partner with her in what I always tell men is if you can, the week before her period, be supportive of her because that's when you're going to get the greatest backlash. Mm-hmm. And instead of being oh my God, you're really edgy. Are you about to get your period? I mean,
that's not going to work.
That's not going to work.
That's not helpful.
But it would be, I can tell you, my teenage self would have appreciated if my dad had come over and said to me, hey, how can I support you? Anything I can do to make life easier for you this week?
Right.
That would have felt really loving to me. I didn't get that. So there's a way to have the conversation. The fact that we have kept the menstrual cycle in secrecy and we're not supposed to talk about it, that has to change. We got to bring it out into the light. Just like menopause is having its moment, we need to, it's the number 2 priority of our system. You should be able to talk about it if you can find a way to do it in a culture.
Yeah, 100%. And just to extend this conversation, what do men need to understand about the women in their lives that are going through perimenopause and menopause?
Yeah. Again, thank you.
These are just mystery boxes.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you for asking, because what we're seeing with women as they go through menopause is if men could understand there's a brain change that's happening, and it's happening for the better. It's actually a brain change. This is Lisa Mosconi's work. The brain is pruning away the neurons it no longer needs, and it's creating a new brain, new neurons that's going to have the woman that you're married with or your sister or your mother is going to have their behaviors looking very different. So understand it's an upgrade that's going on.
Different in what way?
So let's use myself as an example. My family home was a family home in which our rule was all kids are welcome here. Everybody's welcome, which meant it was like a circus in our home all the time. And so a lot of dirty dishes, a lot of cluttered spaces. When I went through my upgrade and through my perimenopausal years, all of a sudden the noise started bothering me. The dirty dishes, I was going to gouge somebody's eye out if they left dirty dishes in the sink. And the behaviors that I could tolerate before, I could no longer tolerate. That was confusing to my family. Mm. It was like, you didn't care about the clutter on the countertop here before, and now you're yelling at me for it. And that was because as my nervous system was changing, my hormones were changing, I became much more sensitive to my environment. So that was one big change. A lot of women start to see that they need more time alone. Like they just need to isolate themselves. Because what was happening is there's a neurochemical shift. And so they're learning to hear their own voice. They're starting to understand themselves anew with a different neurochemical system. Our teenagers, when they go from 10 to 13, and all of a sudden they love us and then they're a little edgy, we understand that.
Yeah.
But we don't give women in menopause the same grace. Mm-hmm. But there's a neurochemical shift that's happening here. That's the key to know. And most women, when they get into their postmenopausal years, most of them will say, I'm happier, I'm calmer. The people-pleasing really goes away, which is great for the woman, but might not be great for the spouse.
Mm-hmm. There is this heightened sort of commitment to authenticity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. But yeah, these things are not talked about really very much. What is your sense of women even being conscious of these changes and how to navigate them, let alone like the men in their lives, understanding it in a way sufficient enough so that they can see clearly what's happening and figure out strategies to be supportive?
Yeah. Again, I think because we're talking about it now, all of a sudden more men like you are like, help me understand this. So one of the things that I think worked for my husband and I is I started using language like a new version of me is emerging. I feel different. I can't cater to the family's needs anymore. I can only cater to my own needs. I talked about the cleanliness of the house. I talked about the solitude. And so you're going to have to understand that I'm changing. So I'll take ownership over that. And he didn't love that so much at first. But what morphed out of that was a conversation that he would ask me, tell me what you're discovering about yourself. What's new that I don't know? I mean, we met at 21. And just that alone was really interesting for me. It's like, well, I've learned that this behavior doesn't work for me anymore. This one doesn't work for me anymore. And so it's really interesting to watch myself. And he was so present in that whole experience that it was like I brought him into the neurochemical change that was happening to me, which made us connect more. When you look at women, the most common time for a woman to commit suicide, 45 to 55.
Because
this neurochemical shift is happening in her. And so now all of a sudden what's ending up happening is she's changing and the husband is like, wait a second, why are you changing? You're not the woman I married.
That's interesting.
60 to 70% of divorces are initiated by women after 40. Why is that?
Because they change and they become more empowered with who they are and less tolerant of, their man's bullshit probably on some level. Yeah. But also, not being afraid to speak their mind and maybe alienating or pissing off their partner such that their partner's like, I don't want to be in this anymore.
Yeah. Again, I'll just use myself as an example. It took a lot of intentional conversations. to be able to just explain that he met me at 21 and I'm sitting here at 55 and I'm very different than I was at 21 and I'm very different than I was at 45. And it took a lot of like, my behavior used to be this and I can no longer do that otherwise I don't feel true to myself.
There's something empowering about that in that it puts the lie to the traditional idea that women go through this existential crisis when the children leave the home and suddenly, there's nothing left to nurture and there's a loss of meaning, purpose, and direction. Right. It almost feels like what's happening hormonally with menopause is like a way of reclaiming yourself and rebirthing yourself. It's like you've graduated from that.
Yep.
And now it's your time.
Yep.
Right? And like you get to be you and do what you want to do. Yeah. And you don't have to like cater to everyone's nonsense anymore. Yeah. Like your tolerance level for that is sort of over with.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. And my response to that in the most loving way.
But there's decades of programming around this. Like if you're in a family system where they're like, what do you mean you're not going to do that thing that you've always done for me?
Yep.
And you're suddenly like, yeah, I'm not available for that anymore.
Bingo.
Like without communication and understanding around that, that's a setup for a fracture in the relationship.
Yeah. And so it's a moment for men to step up.
Yeah.
I mean that I mean that with love. It is a moment, if you are committed to the relationship, to get to know your wife in a new way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in that exploration right now. And I've noticed these things. My wife is like, yeah, I'm not cooking anymore, or like, I'm doing me now and here's what I want to do. And like, this is what I'm doing. It's not like, hey, let's talk about like how we're making sure that everyone's taken care of because I want to do this thing. She's just like, no, I'm doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's cool. I'm happy for her. Like I want her to feel, nourished and fulfilled and be in a place where she can feel like she can do those things, it is different. It is different.
It's liberating for the woman.
Yeah.
I mean, so much. And again, I go back to, we talk about the patriarch as like, we sort of throw it out with venom, but really it's just a system that taught women to behave a certain way. And so when they go through menopause, all of a sudden we're like, we don't want
it's sort of like a fuck that.
Yeah. We don't want to behave that way anymore. Mm-hmm. And so women start to stand in their power. They start to become more authentic to who they truly are. And that's really unearthing
But it's also
people.
A very attractive quality.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody who knows themselves and doesn't kowtow or bend based upon social circumstance, like that's appealing.
Yep. That's if we need to have everybody look at that. I mean, is that the goal to have the person you love behave in the way that's pleasing you, or is it to have the goal to have them behave what makes them feel congruent with themselves?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is all a piece with your overarching kind of global message, which is about taking ownership of your life and leveraging all of these tools, be it fasting, all of the things in the toolbox, so that you're not only, not exporting all of these decisions to other people, you're taking responsibility for yourself, but in so doing, like you are, it's an evolution. It's a becoming, like you're becoming, you're stepping into your more self-actualized, authentic self.
Yeah. Well, if nothing else, you're stepping into your own authentic version of you that perhaps you didn't see since you were a little kid, or maybe you never saw before. But so many women I sit with are like control freaks. The ultimate control is to control yourself and be the most congruent with yourself, whether that's through the food you eat, when you eat it, the types of exercise you do. And this goes back to what I was saying before about my mission, is to try to help women understand their design so that they can step into that congruency.
There's control, but there's also neurosis, right? I think fasting attracts control freaks because it's like the ultimate expression of trying to exert control over your life. And I do think that it's important to kind of at least address that. Like, if you are so tied to, your blood sugar levels through your CGM, or you're obsessed with your Whoop data, or you're basically just hyper focused on, the micro aspects of whatever your next meal is going to be, you're missing the bigger picture here. And maybe you lose weight, maybe you stabilize your metabolic health or what have you. But that's not really health.
Yep.
And I'm sure in your practice, you've seen people who are kind of out of balance in that way.
Oh, yeah. That's how Fast Like a Girl came about, is that I understood fasting, started teaching it to the women in my practice. Well, everybody, but I started seeing that the more women fasted longer over and over again, same way, that something was happening. Their hair was falling out. Their periods were stopping. Their agitation was going up. And so I could give a man a fast and put him on fasting protocols, and that wasn't happening. And so what the women started doing in those initial stages is they doubled down on, well, I need to fast more. And then more hair came out and more agitation. And then many of them started gaining weight. And so that's when I mapped it to the menstrual cycle. And I was like, wait a second, there's something missing that's different about the female body that needs to be treated different. Mm-hmm. So, but you can extrapolate that to all women's health. Women are rhythmic beings. We're meant to move in and out of stress. We're meant to move in and out of food. Our hormones move in and out much more than men. So the control freaks that double down and try to do more, that doesn't work for a woman's body. It's even like, I've even thought about this, of like the typical work week is great for a male body, but it doesn't work so well for a female body. She should have a work month.
What would the optimal work schedule look like in your opinion?
Yeah.
Like if you were suddenly in charge and you got to dictate?
Yeah. We tried to do this in my own business, and it's a little bit tricky to do, but let me tell you, hypothetically, what would look really great is you would put in longer hours day 1 through day 10. Because estrogen's pretty cortisol resistant. Like, she can handle that. She's the diva. She can handle a lot. So you can put in longer days. I'm not saying that you would work 10 days in a row, but you can definitely work the longest. When a woman is in ovulation, you put her in the boardroom to dream up some amazing business ideas, because she's got estrogen at her peak, she's got testosterone, which is going to motivate her, and she's got progesterone, which is going to calm her. So creativity-wise, she should be used in that time period. You should use her for innovative ideas. Same, the work week could be the same. Again, we tried this and didn't really master that. The back half, she now needs to slow down. The week before her period, give her the whole week off. If she's going to work a ton in the first half of her cycle, make the back half of her cycle a little bit softer, a little less work. And every company would have to decide what that is. Years ago, an article came out from Spain that the federal government was going to try to give women 3 days every month off for menstrual leave. No questions asked. They got 3 days. I have no idea how they squared this with the men, but this came out in the news. And originally, they said the 3 days were going to be day 1 through day 3 of their period. And my brain was like, no, it should be the 3 days before her period. So every company would have to come up with their own formula, but that's what the cadence would look like.
But if you're working in teams and every woman's cycle is different and it's not synced up or whatever, you know, like that could create chaos. Like the feasibility of that becomes challenging, but the principle is very sound.
This is why we were never, as a company.
If you couldn't even like get it to work,
We literally sat with it because 95% of our employees are women, and my husband helps run the business with me. Mm-hmm. And so he and I sat down and really thought about it. We thought about doing the 3-day leave and giving no questions asked. And eventually, because we talk about this all the time in my business, I just said, hey, if you need more time off at different parts of your cycle, you just let us know.
And that's working.
Yeah.
And also you can say, oh, this is the time of the, you go into the vision room right now.
Yes.
Like this is your moment for that. Like, have you noticed changes in your business as a result of just being attuned to that?
Yeah, full transparency, we haven't gathered everybody in ovulation to do that yet.
I do think that on some level, a woman can try to do the best they can to take responsibility for that. Not like it's like the employer is going to do what they're going to do, right? And it's not like most people don't have that much agency in their job, but to the extent that you do have some liberty or agency to like look at the month and say, okay, like how can I front load all these projects that I'm working on or whatever, so I can like alleviate the stress at this period of time because I know that that's going to, benefit me the best, and make those little subtle tweaks.
Yeah. And
that
then
would probably be a good takeaway, right?
Super easy to do. And then could you map your other health habits with it? So if you have a big deadline on a project and it's day 21 of your cycle, progesterone's coming in, you're not supposed to be working as long as you're working, then perhaps you skip the long run. Perhaps you don't fast. Well, you shouldn't be fasting at that time anyways, but give yourself some grace and some rest in other parts of your life if that's what's required of you at work.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about toxins. What are we going to do about our toxic environment?
Yeah.
Not just the toxic foods that we're all addicted to, but basically all of our consumer products, all of our beauty products. Now it turns out, did you see this study the other day about, obviously like plastics, microplastics, all of that. And now it turns out that the water in plastic bottles might just be just as bad because of the plastic lining in the cap. Yeah. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
How are we escaping this?
Yeah. Well, the first thing everybody needs to know is like, we are definitely living in the most toxic time in human history. And you need to think about removing toxins. You need to think about some form of a detox, like where that might have been optional 20 years ago, it's no longer optional. So I'm super happy you're bringing that up. The second thing, and the way we used to detox so much in my clinic, and the way we would always know where to start, is we would take a toxic inventory of like, tell us about your beauty products, tell us about your cleaning products, tell us about your food, talk about like homes you've lived in, were they moldy? Have you lived within a home that was remodeled? Like we would do a huge inventory and we would come up with what we called your toxic bucket. And in that toxic bucket would be all the toxins that you had accumulated. And what we found is the people with the most amount of toxins, all it took is one little toxin and like their symptoms were through the roof. So this explains how, let's use mold as an example. I'm highly sensitive to mold. If I walk into a room with mold, I'll be the first one to tell you. I'll be like, there's mold in here. Because my mold toxicity had gotten so high at one point, my toxic bucket had gotten so high that I'm very clear what will tip it and make me symptomatic. So we have to go and look on a daily basis of what's your sensitivity to smells, stress. A lot of people, if they're not tracking this, they might go, well, this doesn't make sense. But if you track it, start to notice where you put yourself, where you react. You start sneezing, you're exhausted. All of those can be indications of an environment that's filling your bucket. Now, to answer your question of like, what are we going to do about it? If you know you are hypersensitive to toxins, then every single day you need to have some version of detoxing. It could be as simple as sweating. Make sure your detox pathways are open. You can throw a fast, a 17-hour fast. You start to stimulate autophagy and you're releasing some toxins out of those cells. You could, for a woman, you could start eating more green leafy vegetables. Green leafy vegetables feed the microbes that can start to break those toxins down and get them out of your system. You can look at putting air filters, go around and look at your air filters in your environment. Look at your laundry detergent. There's so many ways we can start to detox, but you just got to take a door in and go for it.
It's overwhelming almost to even begin to tackle that. And obviously there's a hierarchy of things here. So in your practice with the people that you've treated and that you're in contact with, what are the top offenders? Like if somebody's listening to this, like it's a whole undercurrent of your message is like we have to reduce stress, but it's stressful just to receive all of this information.
Yeah.
And for many people, even the prospect of doing a fast, that's stressful also. Then the idea that everything in the world is out to harm you, like this is just making the whole thing worse, right?
Yeah.
Like what we want is people to feel empowered and to be making, these small little decisions every single day that are moving them in the right direction.
Make them small. They don't like, so if you read that thing on plastic water bottles, you make a commitment to yourself, if that resonates with you, that you'll only do glass. That alone is a big step. So you don't need to take on everything all at once. Just take the one of those things on.
And for somebody who is maybe just not as energetic as they feel like they should be, feels a little detached from their life, doesn't have the worst eating habits, but not great either. Like, how do you get to the bottom of what's going on with this person? Like, you could do endless tests to figure out mold and toxins. And, obviously there's low-hanging fruit like processed foods and the like, or sleep patterns. But this, can quickly become a sort of Sherlock Holmes affair where, we all know people who have some affliction, they can't figure it out, and it takes years and years and years before they figure out, oh, it's this dust mite, or it was this, mold infested house that I lived in 15 years ago.
Right.
Before they can and that's only then can they begin to like build the path towards getting over it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where we come back to the metabolic switch. If you can go into periods of time where your body has a rest from at least the food toxin, and it can start to repair itself, give it an opportunity to repair itself. And then when you go back into food, like I like food as the door in. I think it's like, look at it and say, did nature provide this? Or did this come in a package? And was it made by a human in a lab? And then can I give myself a certain period of time every day without food so it can repair itself? And can I clean up my food system? I found that was the door in. We used to do heavy metals, to answer one of your questions, is the worst. Lead is in our water, lead is in our soil. There was actually a crazy article I saw in the Atlantic the other day about how they're even finding that lead is like contributing to psychoses that's leading to the mental behavior of murderers. Like lead is gnarly. And it's in our soil, it's in our paint, it's in our water. But
hopefully it's not in our paint anymore. That was like, a thing of the 70s. I remember growing up, lead paint.
But a lot of elementary schools
still,
they haven't gone in and redone them all. They just painted over it. So it's still in schools. Wow. Yeah. Lead's the biggest one for sure. So this is what I found is I used to do all these supplement detoxes with my patients. We would give them long lists of like, go look at your bathroom, go look at this. I would take them to the grocery store and I would show them how to read labels. And it was arduous, no doubt. And then I found fasting. And I realized if I just started by cleaning up their diet and giving them extended periods of time where they went without food, the body started to naturally detox itself. And once we did that, the toxic load came down and their sensitivity to all the other toxins were less.
We have a built-in detoxifying organ. It's called the liver.
Yes.
And ultimately, isn't the liver responsible for the vast extent of, whatever needs to be detoxified?
Yeah.
And everything else is sort of a cherry on top. So correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just a layperson, but it seems to me that the best way to make sure that your body is really getting rid of these toxins is to make sure that your liver is healthy and operating as it should.
And your gut, I would put your gut and your liver in the same category.
So how do we tend to our liver and our gut? I mean, that's like another 3-hour podcast.
Yeah, well, let's make it easy. Let's just make it really easy. The liver loves bitter foods. So like a lot of dandelion greens, radicchio. So I Eat Like a Girl, I put a bunch of liver because the liver is so important for women. So there's that. The liver also is the storage of anger. So resolving conflict, forgiving people, like there's an emotional component to it. And then you do have your liver offending, like the certain medications and alcohol. Like you don't have to do much to help the liver out. It's a very forgiving organ. So if you just take a few things out, add a few things in, work on forgiveness and some emotional pieces, it starts to function pretty well for you.
There's no one size fits all situation here. There's not just one tool. Like, I've heard you speak at length about fasting, and I like the fact that you said, like, this is a tool in the toolbox and an important one, and I think a fascinating one, and I think one that we're continuing to, learn more and more about.
Yep.
When you think about, like, what are the most important things that every person should be sort of practicing and thinking about? I mean, you have basically like these 5 principles, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe as we're starting to kind of near the close of this, let's list them out so that people know this isn't just fasting.
Yeah, right. That's like people, when they first meet me, they're like, oh, you eat? Like,
right.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do eat. Because
you haven't transcended eating.
No,
Okay.
No, I haven't at all.
You're not what is it called? A breatharian?
Yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Well, I guess you could be a breatharian. I'm definitely not a breatharian. So, the first principle that I talk a lot about is, and we've spoken about it in here, is get your blood sugar stable. Understand how to stabilize your blood sugar. That could be by tacking on fasting windows. That could be by putting certain foods together, like put fat with every meal, put leafy greens with every meal, put protein with every meal, whether you're a vegan or not. But make sure that you have a composition of your meal that keeps blood sugar stable. So that's the first one. The second one is what I call feed your microbes, not your taste buds. So this is really interesting, and this ties into, you've asked me a couple of times, like, well, that's overwhelming for a person. Okay, when you go to eat a meal or pick a meal, usually what we end up doing is we tend to think, I just want what my taste buds wants. But what if you ask, what do my microbes want? So, for example, when I sit down at a restaurant and I look at a menu, I don't ask myself first, what am I in the mood to eat? I look at the menu and I'm like, what haven't I eaten in a while? And I pick the food that is going to be the most unusual because I want to feed my microbes a different food. We have trillions of microbes and they all eat different things. Mm-hmm. So diversity is really...
Healthy gut microbe depends on a diversity of foods.
Yeah.
And also fibrous foods.
Right.
And fermented foods too.
Fermented foods are incredible. So just start to expand what you're eating and those microbes will change. And as those microbes change, then your taste buds change. That's how you change your taste buds, is you change your microbes.
It's crazy, but that's true. Like I have experienced that. Yeah. When you seed your gut flora with microbes derived from McDonald's, you will start to crave McDonald's.
Right. Exactly.
And when you start eating healthy, suddenly you have an appetite for healthy foods.
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of neurological connection there between the gut and the brain.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, they've another thing we should know more about is what microbes control different cravings. They actually have pinpoint. There is a microbe that if you have an abundance of it, you crave chocolate.
I have heard that.
So we have examples. We just don't know enough. We haven't studied the microbiome long enough, so we don't completely know. Candida is a great example. Anybody who's had candida will tell you I have crazy cravings for sugar I can't overcome. Well, that's a fungus inside there that's trying to keep it alive, so it gives you those.
Contingent upon you feeding it sugar order to perpetuate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the third one I really think is important because my teachings initially were ketogenic origin and talking about, carbs. And I think carbs have gotten a really bad rap. And what we need to do is do what we did with fat and separate it out and say there's nature's carbs and there's man-made carbs or human-made carbs. And nature's carbs are fruits, vegetables, your potatoes, squashes. We should be leaning in more to nature's carbs than looking at something that comes in a package. don't worry about counting carbs. Just make sure the quality of your carb is one that came from the earth. Super simple.
I also think there's some confusion when it comes to blood sugar stabilization around carbohydrate intake.
Yep.
If your goal is solely to make sure that line is flat and there's no spikes, then certainly you can achieve that by avoiding eating carbs. But that's not a proxy for insulin sensitivity, because the minute you introduce that sugar, it'll go crazy. So you're sort of lured into or lulled into this notion that you're eating healthy because you're not seeing those spikes. But that doesn't mean that you're metabolically robust. The key is to have the metabolic health such that when you introduce those carbs, you'll get a spike, but it will come back to baseline quickly and it won't go haywire. And I think there's a lot of education that still needs to happen around that idea.
That's pivotal, because we get all the time people asking, well, oh my gosh, I ate a meal and it spiked my blood sugar 40 points. Is that bad? And my response is, how quickly did it come down? That's what the postprandial is what you should be worried about.
I mean, this is the concern that a lot of people have around CGMs. I think CGMs are a tool, just like a scale. They're giving you data and information, but without the education piece, they can be misused, and that misuse can lead to even poorer health outcomes.
I had somebody tell me one time, they're like, I didn't want to. They stopped wearing their sleep monitor because they're like, I didn't want to wake up every morning and have my monitor tell me what kind of day I was going to have and how good my sleep was. And I think, to your point, these biometric wearables are interesting, but when we start living our whole life by them, they now become more harmful.
Yeah, you have to have a healthy relationship with them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's that neurotic thing. If you're neurotic about it, like this is not good.
Yeah. So to your point, like the postprandial, look at how quickly your blood sugar comes down. And if you're not wanting to wear one, are you energized by a meal or are you sleepy by a meal? That's pretty easy to figure out. And if a meal made you sleepy, it probably was the wrong metabolic mix in there. So the fourth one, the fourth one is protein is definitely the hero macronutrient. Whether you're vegan or you eat animal meat, like we've got to bring protein back in. Amino acids are important for making hormones. They're important for making neurotransmitters, making muscle. Like we've got to be bringing in more amino acid rich foods, and that comes in protein.
But do you really think that people are protein deficient or not getting enough protein? I feel like there's such an overemphasis on protein lately.
Yeah. I 1,000% agree with you. We did this within my community. We tried to, everybody count your body weight in grams of protein every day. Everybody make sure the first meal you eat 30 grams of protein. And we did it for several weeks. And then it was thousands of women I did it with. And I have a membership group that we brought everybody into this conversation. And so then afterwards, I unpacked it. How did everybody feel? Everybody felt like they ate too much protein. Some people gained weight, and everybody was like, that's not sustainable. So I'm not knocking the research on it. I think that the research is what it is. But if we could just, again, go back and look at a plate and be like, do I have protein with every meal? Let's not be counting it and obsessing on it. Just keep bringing more protein in whatever manner that feels right for you. Then you're not going to be protein deficient.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't think protein deficiency is really a thing.
No. But adding more protein. It's
insane to me that everyone, thinks that like people aren't getting enough protein.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my little pet peeve.
Well, or just don't, for women, it's like, can you stop giving me one more thing to track and count?
Yeah, I mean, it just adds to the stress of it. I will say that eating protein early in the day helps control satiety.
Yeah. And with every meal, it helps too, for sure. So, and then the last principle was, one that hopefully everybody knows, which is fat doesn't make you fat. And just like we have to separate out the carbs, we need to really look at nourishing good fat, like olive oil is amazing. I drizzle high quality olive oil on everything. So are you adding that good fat in and keeping the toxic fat out? So let's stop villainizing fat.
You said that the goal of health is adaptability. We've talked a little bit about that. And that health is a verb. So I think, maybe a good way to land the plane is with some reflections on those ideas.
Yeah. You found some of my favorite statements.
Oh, good.
I don't know why we made health a noun. Think about it. When it's a noun, it's an object to be obtained. It's something tangible. It's a destination. Health should be a verb. How many of us have been in the best shape of our life? If we stopped doing what got us there, we would fall backwards. So it's an action. Health needs to be an action you do every single day of your life. If we keep setting it up, like I'm going on a diet, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. What happens once you lose the 30 pounds? What's your next move? This is the Ozempic. What's your next move? You lost the weight. Where are you going now? Well, that was a noun approach to health.
Especially if you think that goal is then going to solve all of your other problems. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem with weight loss. In full transparency, when we first discovered fasting, I kept saying, I don't want to be a weight loss expert. And because what happens is everybody thinks they're going to lose weight and everything in their life is going to change. But what they realize is that there's a skinnier version of themselves that is still unhappy and that they need to deal with that. Mm-hmm. So I totally agree with that. But if you look at it as a daily action every day, what am I doing to keep healthy? What am I doing to keep myself slowing the aging process down? What am I doing to keep this metabolic switch? Be playful with it. I mean, we threw out so many tools here. If you get rigid with it, if you're like, oh God, these are like another level of have to, we're back at cortisol's high and the whole system falls apart. It needs to be something that's like flexible, enjoyable, that you're curious about, and that you can sustain every single day over the course of your life. And each time we set ourselves up for failure when we get really rigid with our health habits, and then we do it for 90 days, 6 months, and then we're like, forget that. And we all of a sudden go back to the old habits that was building disease.
Throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah. I mean, surely you've seen people do that over and over.
Of course. Yeah. I've done it.
Right. Me too.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, me too.
This is the most human thing in the world. It's so illogical, right? Yeah. You have a misstep and then you're like, this is too hard, forget it. And then you just abandon the whole enterprise.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of what I feel sad about with social media is that we have all these experts that get up and say, you should be doing this. And people are judging all their health habits off a 90-second reel. Mm-hmm. It's like we have to stop making absolutes. It's a toolbox. Here are a bunch of tools. Which ones are you pulling out every day? How are you using them? Which one works for you for your time of life? And the understanding that your body is always regulating itself to whatever environment you're putting it in. It's always working in your favor. It's always trying to heal you. And your job with your health habits is to have a lifestyle that has some flexibility in it.
And to develop a relationship with yourself and your own intuition that through experimentation and over time, you will begin to understand which tool is appropriate when, right? And it goes back to the agency piece, like really, honoring yourself and shouldering responsibility for this one life that we're living and not waiting until you have this doctor's appointment and they're going to tell you what it is that you should be doing or whatever the latest, sort of morning routine is on Instagram that day.
Bingo. I think the more we can hold it with curiosity and not judgment of like all the things we see out there, even down to the toxic thing you were saying about how we're just getting, so much information about all the toxins. Like, be curious. If you can move to curiosity and just go, okay, wonder what in my environment, what toxins are high, as opposed to, oh God, there's another thing I have to do. Then all of a sudden you've put yourself in a more healing environment just from how you're going to approach these things.
Yeah, but it's also easier said than done. Like everybody's stressed out and is working too much and is under rested. And, the idea that like, okay, now I got to do this. And now it's just like, it feels like a burden, and it just makes the whole thing feel out of reach.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree on that.
I'm welcoming you to disabuse people of that and to find a like put matters to rights and kind of diffuse that excuse.
I think we have put everything ahead of our own relationship with our body. So we are success driven. We are image driven. We, at the end of the day, instead of sitting and just nourishing and loving on our body, we go to the Instagram and Facebook and we're on our phones. We have prioritized this modern lifestyle over our bodies. So if you actually understand how your body works, you would understand it needs rest. You would understand it needs sleep, it needs certain foods. And if you give it that and you pause enough to be able to do that, you will find that all these health habits are quite simple to be able to do.
In your experience, is it that this is something that women find more difficult than men because they are caregivers and everyone's depending upon them for, like their job is to nurture everyone and make sure that everyone's okay. And that comes at the cost of self-care, which feels like an indulgence because at the end of the day, you've given everything that you've got to all these other people and there's nothing left for you.
Bingo. Which is why menopause is our freedom moment, because we're neurochemically shifting so that those behaviors we can't do anymore. We can't. So we start to take better care of ourselves. So
but what about in advance of menopause, right? Let's cut this off at the pass.
Then you have to make sure that you, as a woman, that you're resting more, that you're recovering more, that you're not go all the time. We've got infertility rates up. We've got autoimmune problems happening to women. We've got, oh my God, the number of women when Fast Like a Girl came out without a menstrual cycle in their 20s and 30s shocked me.
The statistics play that out, right? That is definitely something that's on the rise.
Yeah, I don't know the actual number. I just know because Fast Like a Girl brought out this fasting cycle. And what I didn't see was how many women, tens of thousands of emails. Well, what do I do if I don't have a menstrual cycle? And I was like, but you're 25. Why don't you have a menstrual cycle? Some of that is synthetic birth control, but a lot of that is a cortisol-rich environment that they're living in. So I think to answer your question, and what I really want women to know is that there has to be a rhythm to everything. You can't just put your head down and work out hard, take care of the family hard, diet hard. At some point, your female body is going to break. And if you allow it to stay on that rigorous course, your body eventually, autoimmune starts to attack itself. Your body doesn't think it's safe to release an egg. You can't, so now we have infertility. You can't lose weight because your body's like, we're not burning fat right now. We're running from a tiger. So this is why I love the word curious. If you could be curious about how the body works, if you can look at these lifestyle tools that we're talking about today and be like, okay, how could I bring that in? What modern thing could I take away? You would come back into your natural rhythm. And you would be blown away at how easy these health habits are.
And curiosity is a antidote for self-judgment on some level. Yeah. When you're in the comparison game and feeling like you're not measuring up and being hard on yourself, it's difficult to be curious, right? Because you're too busy beating yourself up.
I agree. And I'm just going to say that you can put any excuse in front of you. And at some point you have to decide, is your health a priority for you or not? Yes, it's difficult in this world right now. But I can tell you as a 55-year-old woman, the most important thing to me at this point in my life is my human frame that I carry around with. Now, I'm not trying to build muscle so I can look great on Instagram. I'm trying to sleep well, think well, move well, have energy, and enjoy living in this body. That's my goal, is to wake up in the morning and be like, oh my God, I get to live in this body. How cool is that? We have all the targets are all wrong. I had a story that I tell often that I was running around my house one day and this 70-year-old woman, cute little woman, all dolled up with a fun little hat on, a little cane, walking her dog, was watching me run around in circles around my neighborhood. And at one point, she waved at me like to stop me. And so I took my headset off and I was like, hi, nice to meet you. She was a neighbor. And she turns to me and she says, it must be amazing to live in your body. And I thought, wow, like what a gift from a 70-year-old woman. And I was in my 40s at the time, to reflect back to me how awesome it is to live in my body. Like I wasn't feeling like it was awesome. I was just checking off working out for the day. But that perspective change, that one conversation made me realize that the scale on the number the number on the scale didn't matter. Even my blood work was interesting, my CGM, all of that, fascinating. But the thing I wanted to do every day was wake up and love living in it.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
One wise elder in my neighborhood gave me that gift in one comment.
That idea that, there's an older person out there that would like kill to be your age, when we're reflecting on like, I'm old and I don't feel like I used to and all of that, like, it's an important perspective shift.
And yesterday, Leanne Rimes is a friend of mine. She says hello, by the way.
Oh, cool.
And so we were sitting and chatting. She's probably going to listen to this episode now. And we were reflecting on her path. So a couple of years ago, we started working together to bring her body back into balance. And she's so happy right now. She's in such a vibrant time of her life. And we were kind of going back through the steps. And she said to me, I don't remember like when we first started working together, like what were some of the hurdles that I had? And I said, don't you remember the number one hurdle you had is you would come off of a weekend of touring and you couldn't sit on your couch. You were so restless. Your sympathetic nervous system was so tightly wound. You had no parasympathetic energy at all. That Sunday afternoon, you were depressed. You could barely sit on the couch. You were exhausted because your body had never gotten the rhythm. I mean, her voice has a beautiful rhythm, but her body had never had that rhythm.
Wired and tired.
Yeah. She was wired and tired. So for the last 3 years, then we had fun looking, well, how did that tool work for you? And what about this tool? We just kept bringing the toolbox together. We looked at other people who had certain sets of tools. We brought them into the conversation and we created a village with a whole bunch of different tools for her to heal. And now she sits 3 years later in this place of the happiest, most productive she's ever been. It wasn't one thing. It was a willingness to bring herself after touring how many years since she was 15 years old? Like, how do you take a body?
Adult life.
Yeah. How do you take a body that had been touring since it was 15 and then it wants to heal at 40? What do you do with that? I wasn't going to give her a supplement or a fast. It was a lifestyle that needed to start to put her back into rhythm with her body.
Yeah. Of all the things that we've talked about, again, going back to 10,000 feet, as a closing statement here, like what is the one thing that you want people to take away from your experience and your experience working with so many people?
Stop giving your power away. Stop giving your power away to medication, diets, gurus, and exercise. The power is within you. And your job with your health is to line your lifestyle up, what works for you and your lifestyle, so you can access that power. You can feel that your body can heal from infections, that your body can drop weight, that you can fall asleep, that you can be happy, that you can have mental clarity. Your job with your health is to take your power back and look at your lifestyle as the tool to increasing this miraculous intelligence that you were born with.
Well put. I think that's a great place to end it for today. For people that are interested, particularly in exploring the fasting piece here, of course, there's Fast Like a Girl, your book, and there's Eat Like a Girl, both of which you guys should check out. In addition to that, are there any resources that you like to point people towards?
My pet project that I've poured a lot of time and effort and research into is my YouTube channel. So we have like 2,500 videos there. And so it's a great, like if you want to go dive into it, on each video at the bottom, I've put the science. So if you're a science hound and you want to go see what I'm talking about, but I would say that's my favorite resource.
Awesome. All right.
So,
well, this was great. Do you feel good?
I feel awesome. I feel awesome.
You feel good in your body?
I already told you I love living in my body. I feel amazing.
We did it. Yeah. I think it was good, and I appreciate you being here. So thank you. And come back sometime. This was fantastic.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, cool. Peace.